Hello, everyone. Welcome in to the University Federal Credit Union KSL Sports Front Page. Trevor Allen here with you. I'm the Utes Insider and Crimson Corner podcast host, alongside Zack Hicken. He is the Sports Beat After Hours podcast host, alongside Hema, and he's also a producer with Sports Beat, which you guys can watch on Saturdays and Sundays on KSL TV. Zack, how are you, man?
Good, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. So there's a lot to talk about, right? I mean, though there's not a ton of sports. I mean, soccer's back. We're gearing up for the NBA to come back, and we're talking a lot of college football and of what the future holds with that. But really, I want to start with a team that just moved, I guess, down the road a little bit, about 5 hours from here to Las Vegas, and that's the Raiders. And Kyle Ireland did this piece that is up over at KSLSports.com. And he was talking to one of their beat writers in Vegas. And, from what I gathered from it is that he believes that they could play some games, some fun games leading up to the season here in Salt Lake City, but also think that this could become a Raiders town in Utah. And because right now, I mean, the Raiders are a part of it. But you also have, the 49ers, you have the Broncos, the Cardinals a little bit. And, to me, having the Raiders here, I mean, as a Denver Broncos fan, it hurts. But it's nice to have a team just down the road. But what do you think? Is this going to become a Raiders state, if you will?
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of people, there are people who are going to be dedicated fans to the teams that they've cheered for their entire lives or, whoever that they've chosen to sign. It could be, someone like the 49ers. We see both BYU and Utah fans because BYU had a quarterback that was the starting quarterback for a long time, and Utah had a quarterback that was the starting quarterback for a long time. I feel like, obviously, the Broncos, just because of the regional tie, they've obviously been pretty successful. I feel like we've seen some Seahawks fans kind of pop up. We have Derek Neville saying that it's a Broncos state on Facebook, but yes, I think we're going to see. Yes. I know that's coming from a Broncos fan, Trevor, but you know what? I've seen a lot of people, maybe, and it was Sam Farnsworth.
Yes, Sam, he gets it.
We're seeing some people kind of adopt the black and silver, and you know what? So I am a Seahawks fan, and I came from a household. My dad was a huge 49ers fan, of course, because of Steve Young. But my wife and her family, they're all huge Raiders fans, and they're all stoked. And guess what? If we ever get tickets to go down to a game, I'm going to be rocking Raiders gear, because that's the thing you do when you go cheer for a team. And so, I mean, I'll probably adopt them as my second team, because there's the regional tie. They're going to be easy to get to. I think that there's potential for them to be a little bit of fun this year. I think that they have some potential coming up. They have some really good rookies, second-year players. I like what John Gruden has been doing in the draft. I think that they need to do something with Derek Carr. I don't think he's the answer there. But you know what? They signed Marcus Mariota. Maybe he can lead the Raiders back to some of their glory. But yeah, I think if they're successful, and as long as the Broncos don't take off and end up winning the Super Bowl sometime in the next 5 years, I could see some people maybe turning some ties over to the Raiders and swearing their allegiance over there. Derek adds, they're such a garbage organization.
Derek is not a Raiders fan. We can definitely tell you that right now. But Sam did mention when Sam and I did this stream, let's see, it was last week or maybe the week before, where Sam said that Drew Lock is going to win the MVP this season in the NFL. So, Sam, I hope you're right. I'm just saying.
I don't know what Sam was doing. It was his week off last week, and I don't know what he does in his time off, but man, he might need to go speak to HR about what he was doing.
No.
I'm just kidding.
He's all right. But also, Seattle leaves a really bad taste in my mouth from that one, big game a few years ago where
I feel like about New England.
It was rough. But anyway, we'll stay in the league. But we'll localize it a little bit more with a guy who was drafted in the third round of the 2020 NFL draft, and that is former Ute Zack Moss by the Buffalo Bills. There was one analyst in the league, and it's Lance Zierlein. He listed Zack Moss as his dark horse pick to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. Zach, that's there's a lot of talent in this class. I mean, I'm not saying that it can't be done, but even though I cover the Utes, I know of what Zack Moss brings to the table. But that was a very talented draft, and I honestly I don't know.
Well, especially up top with the quarterback and wide receiver positions, those are all guys that are almost guaranteed, whether it's Tua or Joe Burrow or Jerry Jeudy or any of these guys who are taken up high. There is a pretty long list of very talented offensive players, and then you have Zach going in, and he's already competing for carries with Devin Singletary. Like, he's not the clear established number one back. I do think that he's going to get more than enough carries, just based off of who their quarterback is and him kind of struggling over the first 2 years of his career. But sure, as a dark horse candidate, I give it like a 5% chance.
Yeah.
I give it like a 5% chance, but
because look, check out the list right here that Kyle pointed out, because Kyle also wrote this.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's a guy that you probably wouldn't think of. That's someone that I'd consider a dark horse candidate because he was drafted late in the first round. He is going to the reigning Super Bowl champions, but you know what? They already have an established running back. Like, he's also going to be competing for carries.
And also a $500 million quarterback.
Yes. They're going to throw the ball a lot. And you know what? It could benefit him a lot. But, I would put any one of those first 3 or 4 running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, like, I feel like they're all guys that are going to be pretty clear established starters. And Zack Moss is going to have to compete for carries, and he might just be a third down back this season. I mean, he can obviously do a lot of things. He can catch balls out of the backfield. He can run in between the tackles. He can run outside. But I just don't see him, being the clear-cut starter once the season begins.
Yeah, and he'll obviously split carries with Devin Singletary, and he's gonna have to work his way up to pass him because Devin had a pretty good year as a rookie. But, and I'm actually glad Sam's bringing this up. This is why right here that Drew Lock is going to win the MVP award, is because he's going to be thrown to a guy like Jerry Jeudy. All right, hey Sam, I'm jumping on that wagon. Let's go. All right, Drew Lock's going to win the MVP, and Jerry Jeudy could very well win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Just putting it out there. But it's also been a long time since the Broncos have really been relevant in the last few years. But anyway, so for me,
Broncos front page edition. This is what it's turned into.
Exactly, and you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right?
Depends on who you ask.
Definitely not you or our boss Nate.
Jump in on this.
But I will say that is really cool, though, that some of these analysts are already realizing Zack Moss, for a guy who was taken in the third round going to Buffalo and is really probably not even going to be a starter. Now, let's shift gears closer to where Zach is. Well, not right now. You're in Salt Lake, but BYU. So the college football preview magazine of Phil Steele. I've talked to him throughout the years. I've ordered his magazine. I get it almost every year. He talked to Mitch, and he was really high on BYU, that if they were to play a season, which again, right now, BYU lost 5 teams on their schedule just in a matter of 24 hours. And Zach, you and I were on these streams, a couple of times talking about this, but that this could be the most complete and best team under Kalani Sitake. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Kalani has almost a full recruiting cycle, not quite a completely full recruiting cycle just because of the whole mission factor. I feel like a lot of these guys are guys that he was able to bring in, like guys that are who are getting the majority of snaps. Guys like Zach Wilson, Lapini Katoa, obviously DHC is going to be a big factor. But like Isaiah Kafusi, Jackson Kafusi, all these guys are finally upperclassmen. Like they've all been playing since they're freshmen, sophomores. They're all very talented. Like they've shown flashes of how talented they can be. It's just getting that consistency. Obviously, there's some concerns replacing guys like Dion Ganwalaku and Austin Lee, but I think that they are going to be pretty good this year if they have the opportunity to play. Phil, I listened to what Phil said on Mitch's podcast, and Mitch asked him, do you think they're going to be one of the most improved teams that you'll see this year? He said not necessarily the most improved, just because he usually reserves that for teams that weren't bowl eligible. And since BYU went 7-5 last year, ended up 7-6 after the bowl game, he said they technically didn't qualify for that. But he said that he could definitely see them having less losses, not necessarily more wins, because they could only play like 8 games. But if they go 7-1, that's much better than 7-5, if that makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see, how BYU is able to adjust to the schedule, if they're able to fill any of the games. I mean, I think in an ideal world, they end up with somewhere between 10 or 11 games. I know we should be getting the Pac-12 schedule by the end of – was it July 31st when that's supposed to come out?
It would be no later than July 31st. So it could be today and it could be July 31st.
Okay. So I know that some of the players at different Pac-12 schools are expecting to play at least 10 games, and they might play 11. So they might just do a round robin of the entire conference. It'll be interesting to see what the Pac-12 ends up deciding. But anyway, we'll see if BYU can try and get to that level. They obviously have a tougher task with no conference affiliation. They have 5 games at the moment that they need to fill. Plus, there's potential that some other teams drop it. Missouri could still drop them with the SEC, Mountain West Conference schools, AAC schools. So, best case scenario, BYU is able to play 10 games and goes 7-3 or 8-2. I would think that that's a big improvement. I think that they're the most talented team that Kalani Sitake has had. I think that this is going to be the first time since he's been the head coach that he's going to get 2 draft picks in Kyrus and Matt Bushman. But yeah, I'm not sure. We just had a question come in from Derek Neville. Do you think Big 12, Mountain West, and other independent schools, is that who they're going to try and round out their schedule with? I think independents are probably going to be the ones that they go for first. Schools like UNLV, New Mexico State.
Keep it really, really close, yeah.
Yeah, I think Liberty will play anyone, anywhere, anytime. So maybe BYU gets like a home and home with Liberty.
Does it too?
I feel like Liberty is willing to accommodate. They're willing to pay out money. They'll pay for a chartered plane to fly someone out there. They'll pay for a chartered plane to fly their own team out there. They're putting a lot of money and resources into their program. But I think if they're going to go any teams that they're going to try and round out the schedule with, it's going to be individual schools and not necessarily the conferences, especially with the relationship that BYU has with the Mountain West. I know Sam is probably still listening. He'll chime in and he'll say, so Sam worked in Colorado Springs. That's where the Mountain West conference headquarters are. And, there still aren't a lot of really good feelings for BYU and the Mountain West and some of the member institutions there. But Tom Holmoe does have good relationships with schools like UNLV, Utah State, Boise State. Maybe we see like a Wyoming and a Colorado State, but there are some schools that I don't think will necessarily want to schedule BYU. And so because of that, like the conference as a whole isn't going to go in and help out.
Well, I tell you what, though, Wyoming is a team who's going to be looking to fill up their schedule because they lost one with Utah. Obviously, with a Pac-12 going conference only, the Utes and Cowboys were supposed to be playing up in Laramie this year. And weird enough, though, Zach, the trip back to Salt Lake City for Wyoming wasn't supposed to be till 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, don't ask me about that, but
It's interesting, but yeah, I think the Big 12 is more likely to help out, and like again, that's like a complete shot in the dark. And the only reason I say that the Big 12 is more likely to help out is that they only have 10-member institutions, and if they play a conference only schedule, that would only be 9 games. You would think that maybe they'd want to get at least 1 or 2 more to get to 10 or 11, depending on what the other conferences do. And so again, this is all dependent on what the Pac-12 and Big 10 do, and they obviously have a little bit more leniency. Obviously, with the Big 10 having 14 members, Pac-12 having 12 members, they can adjust their schedules a little bit more than the Big 10 would be able to.
For those of you who want to tune into Mitch Harper's podcast, Cougar Tracks, you guys can go right here into that story and listen to his conversation with Phil Steele. So there's a little plug for you, Mitch. Now, while we're on the subject, Zach, I was going to save it till the end, but we're already talking about it. You and I were tweeting back and forth. I think it was Monday when BYU announced that they were going to postpone their media day because it was supposed to be on the Monday coming up. But because of what's happened, losing 5 of their games, they decided to move it, and they haven't given a date as of right now. And you and I were going back and forth about having a season. I still feel pretty good about at least having some type of season happening in the fall. But I was in a meeting with our digital team here, and almost everyone else didn't really feel so confident about it. What are your thoughts?
So I think it's either fall or bust. I don't think they're going to try and push back the season to spring, just because of you might see some programs try and do it, or some conferences or something, just to try and take advantage of the lack of finances that they're going to have coming in. Like something's better than nothing, but I just don't see how many athletes would actually want to compete in that. Because if you think about it, if they do spring ball, let's say the earliest they can start is like February. They play a 12-game season, and so that's 13, 14 weeks. That pushes into like April/May territory. And then they have to turn around, and they have like 8 weeks before they have to report back to fall camp for the fall 2021 season. That's just not enough time to recover. And you're just going to see a ton of injuries that following fall. I know Urban talked with you about it a little last week when he was on, just saying that workload it's a heavy workload, and it takes a long time for these guys to recover. Usually by the time that fall camp starts ramping up and they're doing their workouts in the summer, that's when they finally start to feel 100% again. And just imagine if a star player blows out their ACL or something in the spring, then they're basically lost for 2 seasons because they'd be lost for fall 2021 and spring 2021. And so they basically lose 2 years of eligibility because they don't have the time to recover, if that makes sense. So I was optimistic like you were, Trevor, to get back to your original point of if I think college football is happening. But man, that email coming from BYU, I know that it all got dropped on them pretty fast, those 5 games in just a couple of days. But they've also had since March to kind of expect that this may happen. Yeah. You would expect that Tom would have put out some feelers based on contingencies if they had lost some games. And I was hoping that maybe they would be able to announce a game or two, and that's why they would continue to have the media day scheduled. But it sounds like they aren't really on track to have that yet. And so we probably won't see the Cougars schedule start until, mid-September, just based on what's going on. So, yeah, I'm still going back and forth. The biggest factor is going to be the Big 12 and the SEC. We're seeing the ACC is looking at doing a conference only +1 thing, but I think the SEC is still going to do what it wants to do, and that might ultimately be the saving grace for college football this season.
I mean, the way I look at it is that it's really hard to. I mean, for one, I don't see them canceling the whole season period. I just don't see how college programs can financially get out of that because they heavily rely on revenue, not only from television, but obviously ticket sales. But, people are saying, well, you won't have fans regardless anyway. Okay, I think that you could still manage it enough. I mean, yeah, you are going to take a loss. It's a lot of money. But imagine the loss you would take by not having a season period rather than at least having a season and getting that television revenue money. That's a little bit different. So for me, I mean, again, I'm on the Urban Meyer bandwagon that it doesn't make sense to do it in spring because you're going to put guys through a lot. And then especially because you might not get some of those bigger name college players playing in that season because they're going to get ready to go play in the league. The Utes don't really have any kind of problem with that because they only have two or three guys who could go to the league next year, but that would mean they would skip their senior season. And I just don't see that happening. Other than that, it's a very young roster. And so it's not going to have as much of an impact as it would for BYU with Matt Bushman, Kairos Tonga, and some of those other guys. So I don't see it happening because I just don't think it's good. It's not going to bode well if you're not going to have a season at all. But I would just say try and get it in there in the fall. But space it out, flex it out to where you have some weeks to be able to play with here a little bit. But all right, Zach, two more things, and then we'll cut this loose. Something we're doing is as we're ramping up for some prep football, we're talking about some of the recruiting for Utah and BYU, getting some of the guys in the state. And Zach, you obviously with Game Night Live, you guys are knee deep into this. And we'll start with Timpview edge rusher Logan Fano. He's a guy who's pretty good, and a lot of teams are high on him. He put out his top 8. And you obviously have Utah and BYU on there, but some other pretty good teams are on that list as well. What are your thoughts on Logan?
I think he's extremely talented. I've followed him. This will be the 3rd season that I've been able to cover him. He is one of the most athletic edge rushers in the state that I've seen in recent years. He is definitely worthy of all the accolades that he's getting, all the offers that he's getting. He's a former BYU commit. I believe he committed to BYU with Logan Peely and Raider DeMooney when he was like a freshman. And once we saw some more offers trickling in, like Washington and Michigan, I think it was after the Michigan offer came in, he went and took an unofficial visit out there last season, and that was when he decommitted from BYU. He said, "I'm just opening up my options. I want to see what my options are." It seems like when I haven't talked to him about this, but BYU may be in his top 8. I don't know that they're going to have to make a really hard push. I probably see like his top 3 right now is like Michigan, Washington, and Utah. And this is just speculation on my part. I'm not speaking for him at all. I really don't know what he's thinking, but once that Michigan offer came in, like I think he started seeing stars a little bit. That's what he was interested in. So I think he sees maybe something a little bit bigger than BYU. He probably wants to go P5. And, it could depend on what some of his teammates do. He has a lot of teammates that are getting recruited, So we'll see what happens.
I mean, he would definitely fit in well with Utah, and he's probably a guy where they could shift him over to linebacker too if they need to, especially because Utah just picked up some quality guys in the 2020 class in Van Fillinger and Xavier Carlton, 2 guys who could really come in and probably play right away, not start because there's some veterans in there, but Utah has
those 2. I do think Logan is more likely, obviously, to be a mission kid than those 2 are. So that would potentially spread them out by 3 years so they can keep him at defensive end. But yeah, we'll see. I think Logan, wherever he ends up, he's going to be a high impact guy, and I'm excited for him to get back out on the gridiron and play his senior year this year. Have a couple opportunities to cover him because he's a really, really special player.
And then somebody who goes to a school that because you went there, Pleasant Grove, Isaac Vaha. He's an athlete there. Tell us a little bit about his game. Where does he play?
So Isaac is actually a pretty interesting story. So he moved here from California. He was like a basketball first recruit. He's 6'7", very talented basketball player. He can battle down low. He can kind of stretch it out, shoot the 3. But he just started playing football. This last season was his first year. And just with his athleticism, his ability to get off the line, his ability as a pass rusher. His recruiting took off, and it took off fast. I think BYU and Utah were two of his first offers. I think it was Utah State was the first to offer him, but man, his recruiting took off, and I had covered a couple PG games this past fall, 2019, and I saw this kid. I was like, okay, this guy has some potential, and so I started following him on Twitter, and all of a sudden, he's getting offers from it started Utah State, then BYU, then Utah, then Wyoming, and then all of a sudden it's Arizona State, and the floodgates just opened.
Yeah, Oregon, Washington.
Yeah, Oregon, Washington,
Penn State. I mean,
yeah,
that's huge.
Yeah, he's really talented. Still very raw. He has a lot to learn. This will only be his second season, but man, this guy has so much potential. I'm excited for whatever program lands him. And I have no idea.
That was actually what I was going to ask you. Where do you think he's leaning? If you were just to guess.
I have no idea.
It's all up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Utah, but he's not a Utah native. He's only lived here for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So maybe he wants to go back to
UCLA?
California. Maybe he wants to go up to the Pacific Northwest. Heck, maybe he wants to go across the country and just kind of do his own thing and go to Penn State. It'll be really interesting. I'm excited for him, though. I'm, again, just like Logan, I'm really excited for him to play his senior season and see what he gets to do this year. So
I wonder if Larry is trying to dip his toes into the Isaac Vaha pool as far as trying to get him to play basketball if he does go to Utah.
Well, I mean, that's another factor is if you get Kalani Sitake and Mark Pope coming on a visit, how do you say no to Mark Pope? No one's saying no to Mark Pope right now. So you know what?
Mark Pope can recruit.
If I'm Kalani, I'm taking Mark Pope on these recruiting visits to go see Isaac up the road in Pleasant Grove, and man, I'm gonna let Mark just handle everything. Hey, and you know what? On top of all that Mark's telling you, you get to play in Lavelle Edwards Stadium too, in front of 62,000 fans.
I could just imagine Kalani riding that.
Oh yeah,
just riding that. I would too, honestly.
Yeah. Mark Pope should be the recruiter for all sports for whatever school that he's coaching at. Hopefully for BYU's sake, it's BYU for a long time.
All right, let's shift gears over to soccer really quick, Zach. For a Real Salt Lake, they're going to be in action on Friday night as they take on Minnesota United FC in the MLS's back tournament, which is the worst name of a tournament you can think of, but we're going to go with it anyway. RSL is coming off of a 2-0 win over the Colorado Rapids on Sunday.
Some things never change.
It is hot and humid in Florida, but it seems like that they're going to be using depth it's 10 o'clock at night there, and it's still 90 and humid as it can be. I mean, even if you look on this video shot right here, you see how drenched these guys are.
Yeah.
I mean, so it sounds like depth is really going to play a factor for this club as they go into this tournament.
Yeah, let me ask you, have you ever been to Florida at all?
No.
Okay.
I've only been to Wisconsin as far as really humid places.
Yeah, and it's not.
But I know it's nothing compared to Florida.
Yeah, so I went to Florida, I think I know it was in June, but it was probably about 4 years ago, and man, that is the most sweaty, drenched I've ever been. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun. And I was just walking around, and man, I was taking breaks to find shade, sit down. I was not exerting myself at all. It sucks. It really, really sucks. And going from a really dry climate here in Utah and going to Orlando, it's a big adjustment for those guys to make. And I know that MLS has been really smart about this by either playing games super early in the morning or later in the evening, but that humidity just doesn't go away, and it is everywhere, Yeah. And so I think that RSL, luckily they have the depth that they would need to compete in this. They can and I think their roster is a little bit more they took bigger rosters down there, right? Because I think they have 30 guys on the roster right now, so they can manage things.
Did I hear it right that they're allowing more subs in the games, 5 players instead of 3? I don't know. I might have heard that wrong.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I'm sure Nate, our boss, is beating his head against his desk right now as we talk about
Nate,
this.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Nate. But no, I think that I mean, obviously having the drink breaks is huge, and all that. It still is really, really hard to deal with, and as they continue to get acclimated, I just think that they're going to play better and better. It's going to be the same for everyone that's playing down in that tournament in Orlando. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So
and then a little bit more soccer here locally. The NWSL Challenge Cup knockout stage bracket is now out. The Royals will be taking on the Houston Dash on Friday night as well, same time as they did with RSL. So they'll be mixed in together. It'll be an 8:00 kickoff at Zions Bank Stadium in Harriman, taking on the Houston Dash. Winner takes on the North Carolina Courage or the Portland Thorns, whoever wins that game, and that'll be going into the semifinals. So, Zach, any other final thoughts on anything that we've talked about or anything you want to talk about?
No, just everyone out there, stay safe, mask up.
Wear a mask.
Yeah, do your part so we can. If you're watching this, I assume that it's because you like sports or you just like looking at mine and Trevor's faces. Right now, luckily, we're social distance, so we don't have to wear a mask, and you can enjoy that. But we all want sports to come back. We all want things to start improving. Things are at the moment just getting worse and worse, and we want it to get better. So mask up, socially distance, do your part, encourage others.
We want college football,
but encourage others to do the same. And we're all in this together, everybody. We're all in this together.
Well, Zach, it's always good to catch up with you. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Zack Hicken, ZAK.
Yes.
That's how you spell Zach. And then I'm at Trevor Sports. You can follow us also at KSL Sports, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the University Federal Credit Union KSL Sports front page. Zach, I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay, thanks, man. Have a good one.